today I want to do a different kind of video because my good friend Mike Peart the other week did an interview with Greg Easton about his plans to run for World Archery President. Today I want to highlight a few segments of that interview, give my thoughts, and then kind of explain my experience as an athlete as well. So the first thing that I want to kind of say is definitely head over to Mike's channel, so Archery Coach Michael. Head over there, watch the full interview. Today I want to kind of highlight three main points from that interview. So the first one that I want to highlight is about the cost of World Cups and just competitions in general that Greg talks about. So let me play the snippet for you first, and then I want to talk about it a little bit and kind of give my perspective as well.
Quality product. I can't say anything negative about that. Costs a lot of money, and that money ends up making the expense for the member associations and the athletes really very high. And so that needs to be. I've committed to what I would say rethink the World Cup. Not that we need the event, but rethink the costs. What's driving the
Okay.
cost for that event?
So this is a really, really great point, and I'm really happy that Greg mentioned this in the interview. But World Cup costs are really, really high. And what he mentioned before that clip is essentially that the production value of the TV production that they do for the World Cups is very good and it's a high quality product. But because of that, and also because of other reasons, the cost of World Cups is really high. And then this obviously gets passed on to the athletes and the member associations and that kind of thing. So this has been a little bit of a frustration with me for a while, because if we go over to here, World Archery's mission here is they've got three main points, but within one of them is to grow awareness and engagement within the sport, and the other one is to empower its member associations to make archery a leading sport in nations around the world. And the reason I've had a frustration in particular with the cost of World Cups, like Greg has mentioned here, is I've coached athletes from developing countries that don't have big budgets to attend World Cups, and in this case Youth World Championships, and they've really struggled to attend events because the way that the funding for the event works is World Archery often have select hotels that you need to stay at for the event that are kind of affiliated hotels, if you like, for the event, because they've got a special deal with those hotels, and essentially they get some kind of a special deal. I'll just put it there, put that there. A special deal with that hotel. World Archery gets some, it seems like they get some revenue from that, so that essentially it helps fund the event. And if you don't stay in these hotels, then you have to pay an extra entry fee, essentially. You're penalized for not staying in the official hotels for the events. And the official hotels for the events, because of this special deal that World Archery has, are very expensive. The daily rate for staying in those hotels is very expensive. So what ends up happening is archers and team associations have to pay a lot of money per night to stay at events. Otherwise, they're then penalized per athlete for the entry fee. So there's a lot that goes into this, and I'm sure there's a good reason why World Archery have done this, i.e. to fund the event. But as Greg said, it needs to be looked at, because there's been multiple cases where myself and then other athletes I've coached, they've tried and they've wanted to go to World Cups, but it's just too expensive. That's the simple kind of truth of it. So the first thing that I wanted to mention, I'm really happy that Greg mentioned this, and I think it's really good that he's aware of this problem, because a lot of other member associations are as well, that they have this problem as well. Now, the second thing that I wanted to kind of highlight is about rule changes and kind of penalties, if you like. So if we go to that bit on the interview, so I'll just go over to it now, but essentially it's about rule changes being sometimes a bit odd, people not knowing what the rule changes are, and also some penalties for things you're doing as a competitor. So let's play the clip and then I'll give you my thoughts afterwards.
Well, not often. Sometimes rule changes made that people sort of scratch their head, and I'm on the field and they're like, "Oh yeah, this just changed," and I think, "Okay, well, why?" And they're like, we have no idea what they're trying to accomplish. They've just changed this rule, trying to be at least more collaborative and more communicative about
Okay.
that. Look at
Hmm.
here's where we are. here's what we think the problem is. Here's where we're going to go. Let's all agree that that's the target, if you will, to use a there it is on that side. Use an use the analogy. There's the target. I think we should make this change to get there and let people they can give you some input of, yeah, that's probably will work, or this is the other problems that'll cause. So be more collaborative. So there's a little less, maybe a rule change comes in and then it goes back out. So that hopefully a little better for the archers. And then just trying to be a little more, I'm trying to think of the right word exactly, but a little more supportive of them in the effort to be out there and be shooting, and a little less uh, punitive about infractions they may make, or something that's not really competition related, but something they're doing behind the
Okay.
line. Um,
So again, this is a really good point, and me and Michael actually touched on this in a video we did maybe a couple of weeks ago. But an example for me of one of these kind of punitive things is when you are at a World Cup or an event, and if you make a mistake on your scorecard. Me and Mike talked about this a while ago, but essentially there's been multiple occasions where a top level athlete has made an issue on their scorecard. For example, everything is correct, but they forgot to sign the scorecard. Everything is correct. They've shot maybe, a top 5 ranking score at a World Cup, and they just forgot to sign the scorecard. Now, currently, there's a kind of rule with World Archery that, like, if you forget to sign your scorecard, your score's 0, and then you end up just being ranked at the bottom. And if you make the cut, so stuff like this is really, I feel, unnecessarily punitive on the athletes, and is really kind of harsh for no reason. Stuff like this kind of, as you can maybe tell, kind of grates on me a little bit, because not only does it affect the archer that is in question, but actually when you think about it more, for example, in one of the World Cups, Ojin Hyek forgot to sign his scorecard, or maybe he did the tens wrong or something, and essentially his score was like half of what it should have been, because half of the 720 was missing. Yes, that affects him, but also because someone had he'd made the cut in this example, if I remember correctly, it then affects the person who is against Ojin Hyek in the first round. So it's not really fair on also the other person who they've ranked highly. They really should have an accurate competition bracket to be shooting against, but then they've come up. They may have ranked 5th or 6th, and now in the first or second round, they're shooting against an Olympic champion, Ojin Hyek, because the scorecard was slightly wrong, but that doesn't, it doesn't really affect anything. He didn't cheat. He didn't do anything really wrong. He just forgot to sign it. Everything is correct. And it's just a little bit kind of Vogon-y, if you know what I mean. So I think rules like this and the kind of punitive measures, some of the rule changes as well that Greg was mentioning about, it does, from an athlete's point of view, when I was shooting, it certainly felt like that. So I just wanted to give kind of my reiteration of that and support what Greg said, because it wasn't just Greg saying this from the perspective of, he's obviously spoken to people, but it wasn't just him saying that from the perspective of someone outside. That is an accurate representation of how it feels as an athlete as well. So I just wanted to kind of back that up, if you will. Now, the final thing that I wanted to talk about is YouTube, as we're on YouTube at the moment as well. So let me scroll to that part in the video, but I wanted to mention this because this is possibly one of the biggest confusions or kind of things that I wanted to change, really. And I think this is going to be a really good thing to change. So let me play the clip and then we'll talk about it a bit more.
of valuing something you pay for, so free, maybe you don't value it, but if we lost most of our viewers because we put a paywall up, we need to kind of rethink that, among other things.
So there he was talking about how World Archery have moved their essentially YouTube channel and the coverage of the World Cups and all that coverage that used to be on YouTube, and you could watch all the World Cup finals, you could watch all the World Cup matches, compound, recurve, whatever, you could watch all of it. And like I said before, and like Greg said, the production is great. But moving that away from YouTube behind a paywall, like Greg mentioned, to me is, frankly, it's a bit dumb. I don't see the point in moving that away from YouTube if you are actually truly doing your mission, which is to grow awareness and engagement within the sport. I follow a lot of different sports on YouTube. I don't know a single sport that doesn't broadcast their matches on YouTube in some way? I'm trying to think of one. You know, whether you watch Formula One, tennis, badminton, surfing, skating, whatever it is you watch, there's a chance, a very, very high chance, that a forward-thinking governing body would broadcast that on YouTube. And I have to applaud World Archery for what they did at the beginning of this, and I think they were maybe even ahead of the curve with the broadcast on YouTube, and I think it's great. I'm just really disappointed that they removed it away from YouTube, because to me that's a massive step backwards. That is not going to grow engagement and awareness within the sport. And in this interview, Mike goes on to say that even being a coach and being really within the archery world like myself, he hasn't paid for the access to the World Cups. I'm the same. I love watching the matches on YouTube. I love watching, you know, the World Cups and World Cup finals and that kind of thing. I'm within the archery world possibly as much as you could be, doing an online archery YouTube channel, you know, a business with archery, coaching people, selling courses as well and that kind of thing, doing interviews and podcasts with Mike. And I don't pay for the paywall. So if I don't pay for it and Mike doesn't pay for it, no one is paying for it. So essentially by doing the paywall, you have just removed, I would think, 95 or +% of your viewers. And that is definitely not growing awareness and engagement within the sport. So there's a lot of these things, small things seem to add up. And there's a lot of these decisions that are being made behind the scenes that don't seem to be growing engagement, growing awareness for the sport, but actually just seem to be trying to get more and more money. That's the kind of position that I feel we're in at the moment. And this is why I just like to kind of publicly support Greg Easton and say, I would like to support Greg as a presidential candidate. And if you're watching this video and you've got this far, I'd encourage you to strongly think about, you know, what kind of direction you would like archery and world archery to go in. If you feel like Greg is also the right candidate, maybe send this video to someone who works at your national governing body for the sport in your country. So, for example, in my country, it'd be Archery GB, the people who are going to be voting on this matter at the World Championship soon. And they'll be voting for who to elect. Send this to people in your organization, send it to club members, or try and get this message out there so that people can make an informed choice when it comes to the election. Because what I don't want is people to just vote for what has been because they're used to it and it's comfortable. Maybe some people were thinking, okay, we don't know what Greg Easton would do. We don't know kind of his full approach. So I think this is why it's really good that Michael has done this interview. And I think it's really important for people to have kind of a balanced view of this, because the current president, Tom Dealin, has been running it for a while. Everyone knows the kind of what's, you know, new, what's happening, what his kind of mode of operating is. And I think it's really important to give a fresh perspective. And I do think Greg is the person to do this. I think what he said in this interview is really good. I'd strongly encourage you to check out the full interview, make up your own opinion as to what you think is good, maybe things that he could do better. But yeah, a bit of a different video today. I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. Share this video with someone who could be voting in the election, and let's see where archery can take us in the future. So that's all I wanted to say today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.